Today is April 25th, 2022. I'm Diane Barrett. I'm here with Louise Seliski. We're interviewing Louise today for the BE collection. Thank you for being a part of this collection. We have been part of the collection for April is our anniversary of 1 year. We've interviewed about 70 women.
Well, thank you for letting me be part of it.
Where were you born?
I was born in Houston, Texas.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
And how long did you live there?
Till I was 3.
2 years. You know what? This was a time when a lot of people our age moved.
Yeah.
That's 3. I don't know. Must have had to do with our parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you a only child or do you have siblings?
No, I have siblings.
Mm-hmm.
I've got, I had 2 brothers. They have both died. One of them died of COVID. The
Really?
other, yep. One of them died in a plane, crashed his plane. And then I have a sister.
Huh. Wow, so tragic losses. Huh.
Yep. And they were like a year and a half apart.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not been a fun part.
No, not at all. They have families of their own?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are there any other gays in your family?
Yes, my nephew.
Okay. One of the things we're doing, and you'll see it when you look at the archives, is we're connecting the genetic link to all of us in terms of our sexuality. So I asked that question. And I would say probably 85% have just off the top of my head, have another gay in their family.
Well, can I tell you a little bit about my gay nephew?
Yep.
My brother Jerry he was a Republican, and he called me up one time. He was in college, and he's kind of hemming and hawing around. And I finally said, "Adam, are you gay? And are you going to tell me you're gay?" And he said, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Oh, have you told your father?" And he said, "Yeah, I did." And I said, "Well, what did he say?" He said, just don't tell me you're a Democrat."
That's right, prioritizing.
Yeah.
So that was great. He told you, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're very close.
Where does he live?
He lives in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
He left the U.S. Because of Trump being elected.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He's really a Democrat. And Trump, I was just saying to Kelly, Trump is getting more attention than Biden. When you open up the news, we open up stuff to get ready for the Zoom interview, and there's Trump.
No.
He doesn't qualify to be interviewed. He's not a lesbian anyway. Fortunately.
Yeah.
So where are you in the ranking of your siblings?
I'm the oldest.
The oldest, okay. And your parents, are they living?
No.
No. And when you moved when you were 3, then how did you get to Minnesota to where you are now?
Well, my mother was not married. My mother was 14 when she had me.
Wow.
And my grandmother and my grandmother got married to a man from Minnesota, and they moved to Minnesota because of that.
So did your grandmother raise you, or did your mother raise you?
No, my mother raised me.
Oh, imagine that.
Yeah.
Right. That's amazing. Well, she did a good job. Huh.
I think so.
Yeah, good. You're alive. And
Yeah.
what would you say is your primary occupation through your life?
Social worker.
Social worker. You said that you were CEO for Battered Women's Shelter?
I was the executive director, and I started the shelter.
Mm-hmm. How did you evolve into that? Going that
Well,
direction?
I went to graduate school in social work, and we had to do a field placement. And I came back to Brainerd to do my field placement because a friend of mine had talked me into doing some work starting a shelter. And so I came back and I was on my field placement for 6 months. And during that time, I incorporated, got nonprofit status, and did all the kind of stuff that we could eventually set up a shelter. And I got a grant. I got a grant to start it.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
How'd you learn how to do all that?
Well, I had help from graduate school,
Mhm.
and then just being part of the battered women's movement.
Mhm. What drew you to the battered women's movement in the first place?
Because community organizing is more what I had done in school. And I was a feminist, and I wanted to do something for women. And I intended to at least, work. And it didn't matter to me. It could have been sexual assault or battered women, either one of those. And we also did run a sexual assault program for quite a few years. But to me, that was kind of the ultimate in anti-woman stuff. And I was going to, and I knew it didn't pay much of anything. And but I was willing to do that for a couple of years to get it off the ground. And I wound up staying there for 33 years.
Who funded that? You said it didn't pay well.
Well, we did a lot of work with the legislature of Minnesota, and that's where we got the bulk of our money was from. It was run through the Department of Corrections at that time.
Is that the state?
Yeah, right.
What piqued your interest to work with battered women and women who've been assaulted?
Well, again, it was being a feminist.
Uh-huh.
and seeing women being oppressed on a continuum, and at the end of that continuum were particularly battered women. So it fit in with my philosophical beliefs. I mean, part of the worst part of being a part of the battered women's movement was working with women who got murdered. Plus, we had 2 children that got murdered. And because of that, I started the Alex and Brandon Child Safety Center, which is a court-ordered visitation for parents, mostly court-ordered.
Must have been hard to say goodbye to that profession.
I was ready to go when I retired. I was ready to go. I'd done it for so many years, and I was just plain tired. I was tired of working.
Hard to let it go when you go on vacation. There are no vacations. There are no vacations with that.
It's not that but it does, but you don't stop thinking about it.
No, that's what I mean.
Vacation or no.
Mm-hmm. I know that from my own work in counseling.
Mm-hmm.
You take it with you.
Yeah.
But when it's time to retire,
Yeah. Yeah.
So how about your sexuality? When did you develop and figure that you were a little bit different?
Well, that wasn't until I was in the Marine Corps.
I don't have that on my sheet here. Okay. When did you go in the Marine Corps?
When did I go? I went shortly after high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was I went in 62.
Uh-huh. And the purpose being education, just getting away from home, or?
In part getting away from home, getting a job. And I had this, when I look back on it, this odd notion that I really owed my country something.
That was 60 years ago. Well, you were an idealist, right?
I guess that was it.
Yeah, I think that's good. Good to have some ideals.
Yeah.
So how long were you in the Marine Corps?
2 years.
3 years. And is that where you had your first real love affair with someone, or?
Well, I fell in love with somebody, but it didn't really turn out to be much of anything.
Mm-hmm. And it was a woman?
Yep.
Okay. And but is that your first, oh, I'm a lesbian to yourself? Do you acknowledge that?
Yeah. I think that, I was starting to believe that, but And we had some, really bad stuff that happened on the base. There were, and again, I didn't identify myself as a lesbian when I first came in. And there was these women. I was stationed in Camp Pendleton at the time, and there were about maybe a dozen or so women in the barracks that turned out to be lesbians, which at the time I really didn't know that.
Right.
And I was pretty naive, and I was, when you're a young kid and somebody tells you about sex between your parents, you think that that's that's kind of it isn't really happen, but it's kind of a joke that people tell, and it's not something that really happens. And that's the way I kind of registered in my head about lesbians, is that, well, something you kid and joke about, but it doesn't really happen. And then I understood that there were lesbians and that they loved women, and it was something different that I didn't understand, but I came to understand that. And they were the people who were the sharpest dressed. They had the shiniest shoes. They did the best job.
Sounds like us, right? Overachievers, right? Overachievers.
Right, exactly. And things went along quite well. But then we got a new general on the base, and he decided he wanted him out. So they had a real witch hunt that went on, and things were really tense on the base. And there was some holiday that was coming up. The city outside of Camp Pendleton is Oceanside, and all this tension was going on. And I had decided that it would be nice to get away, and we would, get a motel room in Oceanside. And I figured that if there were three of us, then that was okay. That nobody would think that we were lesbians, and we weren't. But that somehow or another, having three people protected you from that.
Did it?
Well, yes and no. I was one of the women I was walking with, who turned out later to be really mentally ill, which at the time I didn't know. We were walking along the sidewalk, and there was a motel room, and these two women that we knew that were stationed with us popped out and said, "Hey, hi," and we went over and talked to them. Well, they were lesbians, and which of course I didn't know that at the time. And there was a third person that was sitting there in a chair and kind of back by the door, but I couldn't see who it was because it was dark there, and she didn't come out. And we chit-chatted for a while, and then this woman and I went on our way, and she started laughing. And I said, well, what are you laughing about? And she said, do you know who was sitting in that chair? And I said, no, I couldn't see. And she said, it was Gunny McCall. I started laughing because I thought it was funny that a gunnery sergeant was hanging around with these corporals. And so, I didn't think much of it anymore. Well, apparently she went and told other people on the base about that. And there was this investigation going on at the time. And I got taken into base legal, and they wanted to know about that. And they were trying to get me to say that Gunny McCall was in that hotel room with these other women. And I, kept saying, no, I didn't see her. I don't know who was there. And they would say things, well, we'll be talking about that night or whatever. And then they'd say things like, you mean the night when Gunny McCall was in the motel? And I, no, I didn't see her. I don't know if she was in there. I don't know who was there. And it turned out, as I understood it, is that Gunny McCall was not in that room. she was in San Diego with a girlfriend of hers, but
Really?
she had to explain the fact
Oh, awful.
that she was with somebody else.
So is this someone that I should know by name?
No, I don't think
Okay,
so.
good. All right, good.
No.
Because there's a lot I don't know. But no, that's frightening.
It was terrible. It was really
Yeah.
terrible. And what happened was that all of these women were given undesirable discharges from the
Wow.
military because of being lesbians. And
So did they,
and again,
did they ask you if you were a lesbian? Or they just assumed you were?
no,
Mm.
and there wasn't any thought that I was.
Mm.
But they were given undesirable discharges, which is a terrible thing. And most of them had been in the service for, close to 4 years or something like that. And they were up higher in rank I was really, again, I didn't identify myself as a lesbian at that time, but
No.
I thought it was terrible and that it was unfair and it was wrong and to have done this to them. And the fact that they got kicked out, they got undesirable discharges. And I'm proud of the fact that I was morally outraged by what was happening to them, even though I didn't identify as a lesbian.
Mm-hmm. No, it's fabulous. Well, we've interviewed Greta Kammermeyer. You can find an interview in the collection. We've done a series, but there's movies and other women that were involved with her. So we're developing that now, but her interview is solid. It's in the collection.
Yeah, I met her. I was on an Olivia cruise and she was there. So got a chance to hear her talk. And
yes, she's a good speaker.
Yeah.
Wow. But I mean, all that, I have another friend we've interviewed, Barbara Beck. She's now a judge. She's retired. But she said when she was in the military that they were always pushing and hassling and what was the point of that? Talk about wasting a lot of money.
Well, and it was really a dangerous place for lesbians to be.
That's right. So how did you get out? Did you serve your full term or?
No, I didn't.
I see why.
For one thing, I was too young to be in the military. I was not mature enough to handle it. And I just decided I didn't want to be there anymore. And I don't know, this woman, by the way, the one that I said that was mentally ill, she went AWOL from the service. And she went to, they finally picked her up and they put her in a psych hospital. And then she was brought back to the base after she served. She was in the mental institution, and then they brought her back to the base, and she worked in the office. But I really was not that. I wasn't like that. I went to see the psychiatrist, and just I don't know, told him I didn't like being there and whatever. And I don't know why, but he let me be discharged.
Good.
Yeah, it was a good thing for me to get out because again, I was starting to identify as a lesbian.
Oh, that was dangerous.
Yeah. And of course I didn't tell him that, but because I knew how dangerous that was.
I don't know how safe it is now, frankly. So then where did you go when you left?
I went to San Diego for a few months and stayed with a couple of friends. And then I came back to Minneapolis, which is where I was from. Lived with my parents for a while, got a job, moved out. Eventually went to college and got my bachelor's degree. I was the best thing that happened to me was getting out of the service. I had, because of the benefits I got, it helped pay for my college. And I bought my house, my first house on a GI Bill. So those are benefits that were better than when I was in the military and I was getting paid $78 a month.
Yeah. What was the first job you ever had before you went in the service?
Oh, babysitting.
And after that?
And well, I worked in the in school. I went through what was called the work program, and so instead of taking some classes, you went to a job. And I worked in retail sales, and I sold shoes.
How much did you make at that job?
Huh?
How much did you make at that job?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember. Not a lot.
My first job, I made 75 cents an hour.
Well, actually, my very first job was being a car hop.
I did
And
that.
I was paid more than you were. I got 85 cents an hour.
Plus tips.
Yep, plus tips.
I did that for 2 days till my parents found out I was doing that.
Oh.
A minor, but it was fun. It was hard work.
Yeah, it was hard work.
Yeah, very hard. So then how did you move into the job with the, have you personally experienced being battered or assaulted? Or
I was in a relationship where I was battered.
were you?
The first relationship I was in.
Mm-hmm. Was that with a man or a woman?
Woman.
Mm-hmm. That's sad, isn't it? I'm
Mhm.
sorry. How did you get out?
Well, we moved up from Minneapolis to Brainerd because I got a job as a social worker. And I don't know, things just fell apart. And
It's important to, I'm asking you how you got out because it's hard to get out of those.
yeah.
And I think that there are young women that will be listening to this video having the same experience, unfortunately. How you got out is a big
Mhm.
piece of
Well,
information.
you know, I was in the relationship for 5 years
That's all.
before I got out. And I got a couple of really severe beatings from all of it. But part of it was being a social worker too. That didn't, it wasn't fitting in with my value system either, which was always important to me.
So you remember the day you walked away?
Well, I'm not so sure that I was the one who walked away.
Okay, that's good.
She wanted to end the relationship.
And were you happy about that?
Yeah, I was.
Did you feel guilty?
Not at all. No,
Good,
no.
good.
I was lonely.
Yeah,
But that, I met somebody else and got involved with them. So that changed things.
that was good. You're on your way to freedom.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm sorry you had that experience, but it's good that you're out of it.
Yeah.
And
Well, and it was a learning experience for me. And it was something that really I could use in my work.
that's right. Correct. That's do you have a dream for your future now that you're retired?
Oh, I love being retired.
Do you?
I love doing nothing.
You don't have some hobby that you dug out of the closet for waiting for you for all these years?
Well, see, I always thought that you should have a plan when you retire. And my plan was to drink and gamble.
I see.
No.
How's that going?
I don't drink.
How about gambling?
Oh, gambling I do. There's a casino not far from us, so I have
Really?
some good times there.
So what's your game?
Slot machines.
Really?
Yeah. And then I live on a lake,
Mhm.
which is really nice. And I've got, a pontoon, and I fish, and I have a dog, and I have my partner. So it's a good life.
Sounds good. Is she working?
No, she's retired too.
How did you meet?
Well, that's kind of an interesting story.
I thought it might be.
Uh,
Good.
we met, I was the president of Now and in Brainerd, and I was, we had a
How do you
special
get
meeting.
president? Do you run for office or do you just say, I'll try it?
No, you were elected.
Uh,
But this was a small group. I mean, this is a small town we're talking about. And we had a special guest speaker. And because of that, we had a notice in the newspaper that we were having. Actually, who was Corinne Horrible, who was the ambassador for women's programs to the United Nations. She had been appointed by Jimmy Carter.
Mhm.
And Corinne was coming up to talk with us. And so we had that in the paper, and some people showed up at the meeting that didn't normally come to our meeting.
Mhm.
And one of them was this woman, and at the meeting, the woman that I knew a little bit, not very much, but I knew her a little bit. Anyway, she was, I announced at the meeting that I was going back to graduate school and that I would have to resign as president. We were going to need to elect a new president. And that I was going to Duluth. Well, Bonnie, this woman, came over to me afterwards and she said, I know this woman up in Duluth that you might want to contact her because she might be able to help you with the housing or, other things. So she didn't have her phone number. So she said, I'll call you and give you her phone number. Well, I didn't know, I kind of blew it off and I didn't know it, but Bonnie eventually got a hold of me and she said she had called like 2 or 3 times and I wasn't in, but she didn't leave a message for me to call her back. So finally she got a hold of me and she gave me this woman, her name was Julie, and I don't remember the last name at the time, Julie, and she gave me her phone number. Well, I took it, but then I decided, I'm not going to call some strange woman that I don't know.
Right, wait a minute.
So I got up to Duluth, and not having been in school for quite a while, I didn't know how things were going to work out, how busy I would be. And I was coming back on the weekends to where I lived near Brainerd. And I saw that there was a lesbian support group. And I looked at it and I thought, well, maybe I should go there. That would be a way of me meeting some people because I didn't know anybody up in Duluth. And I, at the last minute, I decided to go because I was debating, well, do I have enough time to be able to do this? And so I decided to go ahead and go. And we were, going around the room and saying who we were and a little bit about ourselves. And there was this woman in the group named Julie, who was in the psychology program, which I knew Bonnie had told me that she was in the psychology program. And afterwards, I went over to her and I said, do you know Bonnie from Brainerd? And she said, yeah. So here it was the same Julie.
Small world.
Yeah, really.
Very small. So then you moved?
Well, I lived in Duluth until we graduated, and then I came back home. And that's when I came back to do my field placement, and I started the Women's Center. And then Julie eventually moved here.
When you start these centers, like you just mentioned, I started the Women's Center. Did you, was this formulating along when you were in school or did it just like?
Well, no, there was a friend of mine that I met through now, and a straight woman. And she was involved in the sexual assault program, a volunteer program that she had started. And I was one of the volunteers in the program while I was living in the area. And Marlene got me involved in the shelter. I mean, she said, there was money coming down and that we should start a shelter for battered women. That's how I got involved with that. And then with the help of UMD, I wrote a grant to get the money to start a shelter. And the first round, I didn't get it funded. which was really probably a good thing because we weren't really ready to do anything. And then there was a second round and it got funded that. And by that time, we were really ready to go. We opened faster than any shelter in the state. And we were the 5th shelter in the state to open up. So we were really pioneers in the field.
What was the secret between the first grant that didn't get accepted and the second one, do you think?
It was where the other grants came from. And one, I mean, to be really honest about it, one of them was designated for a rural area, which is what I applied for. And the woman, let's see, I think it was Mankato that got it. A woman there was her boyfriend was a legislator. And so she had some connections that,
Well, you know,
yeah.
no network.
But again, it was a good
I
thing.
love
It was a good thing we didn't get it the first time around.
Yeah,
Because we weren't ready. Yeah, we weren't ready.
Mhm.
And by the time, and then I had 6 months to work on the Women's Center, and other students got paid for their field placements, and they were in buildings like social services and that kind of stuff where they were getting some pay. And I worked for free for that 6 months. And then UMD didn't have a supervisor, of course, in Brainerd. So I had to go back to Duluth frequently, once a week, so that to check in with them and stuff and get their advice and help in getting it started.
A lot of driving.
Yeah, it was worth it though.
So once you get something like that started, you said you worked for free for a while. Then do the grants continue to fund it, or do they have
Well,
a
eventually what happened was we got the funding for the shelter, and at that time I applied to what was called the CETA program, and that was another government funded program. And they paid for wages. And so I think I got 6 slots to pay for wages, and I was one of those people.
So when you were in your battered relationship, did you personally seek help for yourself?
No,
Really
that's not something you did back then. And also, particularly being a lesbian, there's no way you would have gone anywhere for help.
Even now it's hard.
Yeah.
So what do you think in your whole career now of really helping people, giving out, was the most significant thing that came back to you?
Something good that came back to me?
Either way. Could be both.
Well, the most significant thing were the women I worked with that were murdered.
Yeah.
That was really hard.
Terrible.
But there were rewards to the job because I saw women's lives get better. And battered women are very grateful. I would get letters from people that had been in the shelter, 20 years ago, and thanking me for having been there and how much it helped and how their life had changed because of it. So that
side, right?
Yeah, it really meant a lot.
Really important. What's that wolf on the wall next to you where you're sitting?
Oh, actually, Julie drew that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, she's a good artist.
I can see that. I have a friend that has wolves as pets.
Yeah, we've got pictures of wolves all around the house.
So what's your favorite fairy tale? Do you have a favorite fairy tale?
My favorite fairy tale. Gosh, I really don't think I have one.
Well, just take a moment. Think. First thing that comes to your mind. Or a children's story. Could be that.
I don't know why, but Hansel and Gretel was the first thing that came to my mind. And I don't know that that's my favorite.
Well,
I don't know if I have a favorite.
I'll put Hansel and Gretel in there. That was an interesting, very involved.
Yeah.
Had a brother in it too. Was it Hansel and Gretel? One was a brother and one was a sister, right? They were
Yeah.
siblings. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So you have questions you'd like to ask me? Things you'd like to cover that we haven't?
Oh gosh, I think we covered just about my whole life.
How about your shoe size? We didn't go over that. No, you've had an interesting life.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah,
And I feel like my retirement is well deserved.
I think it is.
And I love being retired.
That's great. Was there a moment you said, okay, this is it, I'm done? I'm going to retire?
Well, actually, it took me a year after I should have left. I mean, I was getting burnt out and I was just tired. And I should have left a year before I left, but I couldn't because they didn't find anybody to take my place.
Good. No, you have given a lot of gifts. So if you knew that you were going to have your life end shortly, what would you like to be remembered for?
What would I like to be remembered for?
Yeah.
My work at the shelter, of starting the shelter. I like being the founding mother in the Alex and Brandon Child Safety Center.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm very proud of of what was created and that it continues to exist. And hopefully someday they will work themselves out of a job because we won't have any battered women.
Well, I pray for that also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not in my lifetime, but I think the day will come.
I hope so. I hope so. You know, women, I've met so many wonderful women like yourself, and we've done so many great things. Just, I know life is changing because of us.
You know, and part of what helped me do great things was being a lesbian.
Also,
Well, for one thing, I know a lot of lesbians have kids nowadays, but I didn't have any kids. So all of my energy really could go into the center. I didn't have to divide it out. And also Julie, my spouse, worked with me in the shelter. So that was a good partnership. Although, we drove to work together, but we didn't pretty much see each other for the whole day until it was time to go back home. So we, weren't in close quarters with each other.
Marge and I worked together. We met working together in the hospital. But then we also worked together in her practice later on in our relationship. And you're right, you don't really, the other person's there, but you're doing what you're doing.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. It makes a good team. And it's very productive, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and it really helped. And Julie contributed a great deal to the shelter and to Alex and Brandon.
That's great. So I'm hoping to meet her.
Well, you have to come up and visit us.
Right.
But do come in the summertime.
I used to go to Minnesota. I'm from Chicago. We used to go to the Winter Carnival when I was in school. We go to
okay.
So I'm familiar with it somewhat. Very cold, but beautiful.
Yes. But in the summertime, you can't beat it.
But we do a couples interview too. You'll see them on the webpage called To Have and To Hold. And then we're doing special interest things. We did pain management and hospice.
It's certainly different than the old days when the only place you could meet somebody was in a gay bar. And you didn't have lesbian support centers anywhere.
Right.
And everything was a secret.
I know. Still, but not as much.
Yeah. That was one of the things that was good about working at the shelter is because, everybody knew I was a lesbian and that wasn't a problem.
No.
And, back before it was popular, when I wrote up the personnel policies, one of the things I put in there about discriminating is that you couldn't discriminate GLBT people. Of course, at that time it wasn't GLBT. It was, what did I call them? I think it was lesbians, because we only worked with women anyway.
I would say the word homosexual.
Yeah.
Very big word. And when I did an internship at the Gay Community Services Center here in Los Angeles, and the word lesbian wasn't even in there.
Oh, yeah.
It was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's there, and many other titles.
Yeah.
So
well, thank you so much, Diane. I really, I enjoyed doing this.
thank you. I enjoyed knowing you. Okay.
Take care.
You
Yeah.
too. Bye.
Bye.